Hi, this is Sensei James Leonelli from Sensei's Weekly Mindset, and I'm here to talk to you about betonline.net. Betonline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer, and esports. Don't forget my personal favorite, MMA. We've got it all on betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, we can help you find those on BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. And don't forget BetOnline for NHL, boxing, golf, and like I said, my personal favorite, the sport of MMA. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. Life isn't always easy, and you don't have to face it alone. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you have access to a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of needs. To get started, you simply answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's most convenient for you. The best part is, if your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at a more affordable price, all from the comfort at home. To start your journey and to get 10% off of your first month, go to betterhelp.com/sensei. That's betterhelp.com/sensei. BetterHelp, you deserve to be happy. Hi guys, Sensei James Leonelli here to talk to you about another one of our sponsors, LMNT. An electrolyte drink mix. Each one of these little packets gives you exactly what you need to keep you as hydrated as all us athletes like to be. If you're like me, you work out a lot, and when you work out a lot, you also sweat a lot. Now, when we sweat, we don't lose just water, of course. We also sweat out salt. We sweat out electrolytes. So each one of these packets contains 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, giving you everything that you need in order to maintain optimal hydration and nothing that you don't. So to go online, place an order for your sample pack, and to get yourself a bonus free sample pack, you're going to go to this website right here, elementallabs.refr.cc/James Leonelli. You're going to see this down in the video below, but I'll say it one more time for you. elementallabs.refr.cc/James Leonelli. Again, it's a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing that you don't. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Sensei's Weekly Mindset. I'm Sensei James Leonelli, owner and head instructor of Tiger Schulman's here in Smithtown. Once again, I am back in my home recording space ready to give you guys this week's food for thought. As we are here, we're kind of like smack dab in the middle of one of my favorite times of the year for a few different reasons, right? Really, three of my favorite days of the year kind of hit all within a few weeks of each other. We have Mother's Day in May, which leads to Mother's Day class in my school, which is one of my favorites. Absolutely love the memories that the kids make with their moms taking that class with them. Then we have the tournament in the first weekend of June usually. And then just a couple weeks after that, we usually have Father's Day. So therefore, Father's Day class, just like Mother's Day class. And just like Mother's Day class, it's another great opportunity for memories to be built. And similar Mother's Day, one of the most awesome things about Father's Day is the way it brings the parent and the child together, and often gives the parents a bigger appreciation for what the kids are doing. It lets them see that martial arts is for everybody. But even more so, the even cooler thing, in my opinion, is it starts a lot of dads on their journey and a lot of moms on their journey in martial arts. So as you guys are listening to this, we are gearing up in my school for the Father's Day class. It'll be this Saturday. And then Father's Day, of course, is Sunday. So it seems to me like a good a time as any to talk about dads and some of the specific wisdom my dad gave me throughout my life and lessons that he taught me, and the value of having a mentor like that. Right? Like I've talked about my dad a few times throughout the podcast history, and just to give you guys a little bit of my dad's background, he is he's an impressive guy. When you look at his resume and stuff like that, he's an impressive man. Recently, he achieved his doctorate. Within the last couple of years, he achieved his doctorate in human services, which is incredible. But what makes it more incredible is just it goes kind of hand in hand with his journey and his career and what he's done. And my dad has had a real knack for always being able to take the next step to the bigger, the better thing very continuously throughout his career. It's funny, he was working as a waiter in a country club, and they picked up on the fact that, hey, you're pretty good at math and you're a pretty smart guy, and they showed him some basic bookkeeping stuff, and he picked it up real quick. And actually, the day I was born, he showed up to the hospital after my mom had already went because he was in an interview for a job in the accounting department of that country club. So he went from waiter to working in the accounting office. While doing that, he attended night school and got his CPA degree. And he went from there to work for the accounting firm that did the books of that country club. So just worked his way up the ladder. And then from there, he was going around working for multiple different clients, and he'd do their books and so forth. And though he found value in that and so forth, and he was happy doing that, and it was a happier living for sure than being a waiter, what he discovered not long into doing it is specifically for this type of accounting that he was doing, where the firm specialized in things like country clubs and non-for-profits. So he was constantly traveling to clients. It wasn't like he had an office people were coming to. More accurately, there was a home office, but he was traveling to the different places. And when you're doing that, it's draining. It's funny. There's one client in particular that I remember that they had that was either very deep New Jersey or in Pennsylvania, because we have some family that lives in Pennsylvania. One of my dad's first cousins lives in Pennsylvania, and at least once a year, my dad would take a trip, and he would stay out with Cheryl and her husband Bob and their girls for a couple of days, and he would work that client and for that week or so. And he was never happy to do it. He hated it, honestly. That particular job, only because he hated the time away from home. Even when he was in his height of things and he didn't see us all that much, at least he saw us a little bit in the mornings and a little bit at night. He would come and check on us when he got home before he went to bed and so forth. And, he got to see us at the very least. Couldn't do that if he was in Pennsylvania. So eventually he just realized this travel was kind of for the birds. He didn't like it. And he got the opportunity to become the controller of one of the non-for-profits that he worked for. And that really kind of opened his eyes, like, whoa, this is something bigger and better than just counting the money that people are spending at a country club. There's purpose to this. There's the work I'm doing has impact on the world. I'm making people's lives better. People who need help, I'm making their lives better. So he did well there, made great connections there, and was happy there for a long time. And eventually came a point where, it was looking like maybe my dad might even become the director of this particular non-for-profit. And they opted to go a different direction. And he and the new guy, there was some friction there, mostly because I think that new guy knew that my dad had also been gunning for the job, and they just never really meshed. So my dad went to a bigger non-for-profit, And that went well for a while. And again, he was pretty happy there. Not too crazy of a drive or anything like that. And again, a bigger non-for-profit to be working for. So again, more impact on his work. And again, eventually he just got to the point where he's like, okay, I'm stale. I'm not this, this particular non-for-profit is as big as it can get. It's as efficient as it can be. What else am I doing? So he took a chance, and he went to a slightly bigger place in the city with an even bigger budget. And he realized real quick that this was not the place for him. Like, it just, personality-wise, he did not mesh with these people well. And because of that, he opted to stay there just long enough to vest in the pension there. Obviously, accountant always thinking of the future financially. And eventually moved on to Long Island Cares, where he was the CFO for a number of years. Now, back up a few steps. During that process, my father also obtained his master's degree. And when he obtained his master's degree, he really got immersed in the world of education, and specifically human services in education, because that's a big part of what the non-for-profit world is. So, obviously they love people in college classes that have real world experience in the subject that's being taught. I had that experience when I went to school, when I was in college and getting my sport management degree. It was still a very new major. The college that I graduated from is now lost its accreditation. It no longer exists. But I was one of the first 7 people that walked with a sport management degree from there. Like, I was one of the first graduates of the program. And unlike everybody else in the program who was just an athlete, I was an athlete in a particular sport, but I was also working in that field. And on top of it, I was also looking to open a business in that field. So I was also working in a field in a sport that was newer. At that time, we're talking 2005. I graduated college. Wow, that's so long ago. Ouch. But nonetheless, that back then MMA was still new. The first UFC was 1993. Right? We're talking about right around I don't remember when the first season of The Ultimate Fighter was, but it was right around then. That's how new the sport was at that point. So it wasn't as mainstream as it was. People knew it, but there weren't the breakout stars that there were of today. This was long before George St. Pierre was around. And, the guys who kind of brought our sport to the mainstream, the Ronda Rouseys of the world, even to a degree, the guys on The Ultimate Fighter. But nonetheless, so I understood how much they appreciated someone with real world experience. And I got invited back to speak at my college for our alumni night many times after graduating, and very quickly after graduating. So quickly, as a matter of fact, I actually happened to still have my student parking pass on my car when I went back to speak the first time. The guy's like, "You can't park here." I'm like, "Oh, I'm a speaker tonight." But nonetheless, back to my father. So he was approached very quickly about teaching. Hey, Bill, would you like to teach? And he did. He made a very quick connection and instantly fell in love with teaching. He started teaching part-time among everything else he was doing. And then he realized, as much as he likes the non-for-profit world, and as much as he liked accounting, now that he was teaching, this was something that he enjoyed much more. And it also, my dad is now 69. It is now, he's like, this is a schedule that, as like someone who wants to partially retire, a teacher's schedule, a college professor's schedule is a lot more conducive to that than the full-time CFO controller. So eventually, after, he was going to leave the postgraduate center, and he was hoping to get a full-time teaching job right away, but that didn't pan out. So I'm sorry, that was in the midst of Long Island Cares, pardon me. And eventually he was there for long enough where eventually he got that full-time teaching job. And that's where he was able to now spend his time. And by the way, while he was working as the CFO of Long Island Cares, he was also teaching at St. Joe's part-time, doing accounting side work for friends, family, clients, etc. And on top of all of that, he was pursuing his doctorate all at the same time. I want to say when all this was going on, he was about 66, 67 years old. So there's a number of lessons that my dad sat down and taught me in my life. And one of the things he used to always say, like they're just off the cuff, that you always save for a rainy day. You always save for a rainy day. You always save for a rainy day. And it's a lesson as soon as I had the ability to execute it and execute it well, I did. And I'm really trying to press Kai and Riley to do the same thing, because I believe that they will be set up much better, fiscally responsibility-wise, if they learn that lesson and execute it early and often. And that was just one thing. But one of the biggest lessons I took from my father, and it's funny, I don't recall him ever saying the words to me. I just remember the way he would teach me to do things. Like, it's funny, as I was preparing for today's podcast and talking about this, I was trying to think back over like conversations that I had with my dad, or I was trying to think about, when he sat down and showed me things. And of all the things that sticks in my head, I remember the day he taught me how to work the lawnmower so that he could pass off mowing the backyard and he could pass it off to me. And of course, every father aspires to that one day, to be able to pass that responsibility off to their kid. But nonetheless, I remember him like showing me meticulously, step by step by step, how he wanted it done. And the ways that, he wanted me to go about it. And like, this is how you handle this section where these bushes are. And this is how you handle around this tree like this. And this fence is not great, so here's how you deal with this fence like this. And it's funny because I remember the first few times that I mowed the lawn. I remember he didn't just like give me the mower and say go, right? But he also didn't ominously watch me from like the deck, just sit there and just like have a glass of iced tea or whatever, just watch me mow the lawn. He did what he often did in life, and it's funny, I didn't appreciate it then like I do now, because I find myself doing the same, where he would quietly watch me from afar, like to see what mistakes I was going to make, to see how seriously I would take something, to see if I was going to be responsible. Because one of the realities of parenting is you never know how good a job you do at teaching your children something until you let go. And that's the hard part. That's the really hard part. It's funny, I see it in my school all the time when I have a parent and their child is newer and their child does not pay attention to the directions right away, or doesn't give in to the structure right away, or right away they're conforming the behavior that they want. And now the parent gets defensive and like, come on, Johnny, do what he's telling you. Get him the spot like he's telling you. And they almost think, I feel, in the way they say things, like it's a reflection on them, rather than it's a reflection as to where that child is in their development. But nonetheless, he watched me from the kitchen window. I didn't realize he was watching me back then, but, like every good dad, he was always watching over my shoulder a little bit for me. And this was exactly the case. And, with the things that I didn't like that I did while I mowed, he showed me again and again and again. And of course, I was at an age where I was not super receptive to this type of feedback. And I kind of gave him like, oh, why does it matter? And I don't recall having the actual conversation, but it's one thing. It's just another example of something that my father said to me or illustrated to me in my life, in his life. Not that his life is overbeen in terms of imagination, or that he's done teaching me lessons either, is that everything worth doing is worth doing well. If you're going to do it, if it's going to be something that you're going to say that you did, if you're going to be willing to put your name after it like that, then you better do it well. And that's one of the things that I've always, taken to heart from my father. And it's something that in how I do just about everything, that rings true in my mind. And I again, it's a lesson I'm trying to, if nothing else, emulate for Kai and Riley, if not actually talk about. Because like I said, I don't actually remember sitting down and having conversations with my father where he talked about like anything worth doing is worth doing well. I just think more about how he did everything, and if he did it, it was done well. Like I remember we had a vegetable garden growing up. And I remember when he handled the vegetable garden, how it looked. I know an Italian growing tomatoes, what a surprise, right? But that was one of the things we grew the most was tomatoes and eggplant. And, the cages were always set up just so, and everything was always set up just so. The weed barrier was laid down. There was a little cutout for where the seeds were going to be planted, a little X cut out into the tarp. And then he would lay out the tomato cages in the weed barrier, set apart every so often. And they were set up in advance, and he did everything very, very, very meticulously. I know, again, an Italian growing eggplants and tomatoes, very surprising. And an accountant being very meticulous. Who would have ever guessed? But nonetheless, I watched the way my dad did things like that. And that's, again, the way that I strive to do everything, is I strive to do it at the best that I can do it. And if I think I can do it better, or I can find a more efficient way, I'm all ears to learn. I also, other things I've learned from watching my father is, just the very nature of never be afraid to stop learning, and never stop learning. Always try to find ways to make your brain work and to learn some way, somehow. And it's funny because nowadays the things that were more commonplace, things that you might consider like the trades, those are the things that have kind of faded a little bit into obscurity. And like my cousin is a master plumber, and he's done plenty of plumbing work in my school, in my home. And now, like, I pride myself in the fact that I can do a couple of those things pretty well. I remember we were piping some water to my garage, and I was laying the pipe. And we laid PVC, and I PVC glued it all. And we had the pipe all laid out where we wanted it to be. And we hadn't yet laid the pipe into the house and into the garage. So we just had it capped. Just, a cap not resting on top, pushed down on top. And I remember having pride because I buried the pipe a little bit, 2 inches of dirt or so on top of it after I was done. And, the caps were sticking out. And then it rained really bad that day, and the whole pipe floated up. And I was like, hey, it stayed together. I did it really well. But, again, just the never stopping learning is just another thing that I just learned from my father. Because that's just who he is. He never stops learning either. And the want to give back. It's funny. I didn't see it as much when we were very, very young. But the more we did things in life, the more that became who my father showed himself to be. The person who always gave back. When we played soccer as kids, he first, did the books for the soccer league. And then he worked with the board for the soccer league, and then eventually became the president of the soccer league. And, he did great things there as well. I remember we put up goalposts, like as a family, one day at the soccer field. Like, these are things that we did. And again, he wasn't getting paid for any of it, but it was like, leave the place better than you found it. Another lesson that my father always taught me, that if you're going to leave someplace, you leave it better than you found it. Any organization you're a part of, any team that you're a part of, if you wind up leaving them for whatever reason or moving on or whatever, then you should leave that team better than when you started with them. And again, it's another thing I strive to do. But to kind of bring things to a close here, I just want to talk briefly about the value of having a mentor like that. And I think parents are some of our best mentors. I'm obviously praising my dad today because it's Father's Day coming up, but my mom taught me very similar lessons. Though my father, of course, talked about always saving for a rainy day, my mom was the one who sat down with me when I got my first paycheck for my first job and taught me how to budget. But nonetheless, I'll go into her on if I get a chance to go into Mother's Day a little bit more. But nonetheless, talking about mentors, having those strong people around you with strong core values, that's an immeasurable thing. And it's funny, there's the old adage, your kids remember what you do, not what you say. So to tease my mom a little and to give my dad a little bit more credit, I'm from a generation where parents said or implied the phrase, wait until your father gets home. And it's funny, when we joked about that years later as adults, my mom's like, I never said that phrase ever. And me and my brother and my sister, we laughed at her. And we're like, Ma, well, we all remember. If not, if you didn't say it, we all felt that way. That's for sure. You made us feel that way. That's for sure. But having a strong mentor or a pair of strong mentors or several strong mentors in a kid's life will do unbelievable things to that kid, right? It's funny because we know this just from how statistics bear out, right? We know that in general, just generally, kids from a single parent home don't do as well educationally and societally in general, right? There's a roadblock in their way as opposed to two parent households, all other things being equal. Obviously, there's other factors that go into it, but if we eliminate that one factor, we go from 2 mentors in the house to 1. Now we've got half as many people to cover our bases. Now, if we have 2 great parents, and then we add in great mentors, like great teachers in school, like a great coach in sports, like a sensei, like someone like that. If you start adding people to that list, now what happens is that kid has so many places to learn so many positive lessons from without having to be taught them, without having to sit down and be lectured them. Because, again, being honest, I really don't remember many conversations I had with my father about, all these things that he's taught me. But I know how he lives, and I know how he does everything. And I see how he does everything. I see the attention he brings to it. And I see how much he cares about what he does. And my mom the same way. I see how she is. And, my sensei the same way. I saw how he was. And the more you see your role models and your mentors do things in a way that should be emulated, the more you want to emulate them. I'll leave you with this funny anecdote. When you have that person that you respect, the most amazing thing happens is you start to take on characteristics of that person, whether you realize it or not. So the little anecdote I'll leave you guys with today is from my lineage to Shion Gravina. What I mean by that is he was my sensei's sensei. So one thing that Shion Gravina does is when he pronounces the word 4, when he is counting 1, 2, 3, he does not say F-O-U-R. He says F-O-A-H. Foa. And everybody in his lineage, because we all respect him, we all say it exactly the same way. Every one of us, when we count, we all say Foa. Every one of us, right down the tree from him. Just a silly thing that shows you the value, the impact that a strong mentor can have in your child's life. So that's all I have for you guys this week. As always, you can reach me via email, senseileonelli@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at sensei_Leonelli. You can find me on Facebook. I'm Sensei James Leonelli. Find my linktree, linktr.ee/Sensei Leonelli. You can find everything Flex Fights. You can find everything about our sponsors. You can find everything Tiger Schulman's all at my linktree. Speaking of sponsors, sponsorship opportunities are still available. Make sure you guys reach out to me, however, that all the information that I gave you to contact me. Find my school online, tsmasmithtown.com. Facebook, we're at facebook.com/Tiger Schulman Smithtown. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at tsmma_Smithtown. Find out more about the Tiger Schulman's organization as a whole at tsk.com. Make sure you guys find the podcast on Instagram as well at Sensei's Weekly Mindset. Make sure that you guys subscribe, get your new episodes every Wednesday. Make sure you guys leave a rate and review. Just helps. Other than that, guys, the single most important thing you can do is share the podcast, It is the only form of advertising that I have, so I very much appreciate it when I see you guys do it. Thank you very much for that. So, until next time, my friends, invest in yourselves. I'll see you guys on the mat.